This story happened in one of the hospitals in our city. The hospital is located on the very edge of the city, an old building with 3 floors. I then graduated from medical school and went to work there. I got a job quickly. I was hired willingly, as several nurses had recently quit. Before the incident that I want to talk about, I worked for about a week, and that day was my duty. As usual, we have 3 on duty: a security guard, the head of the department, and a nurse. On that day, everything started as usual. In the evening everyone dispersed and the 3 of us remained. Me, the security guard, Max, and Stella. We closed the doors and drank tea. There were few patients, so there was not much to do. It all happened when I decided to take a walk and see if the patients were all right. When I went up to the 2nd floor, in the silence of the hospital, suddenly there was a cry of a child. I stopped, listening. I realized that the child was crying somewhere on the 3rd floor, very close to me. My anxiety grew. I know for sure that at the moment we did not have a single child in the hospital, and the 3rd floor was generally empty. Getting up, I looked around. In the semi-darkness of the corridor, nothing is visible, but crying was clearly heard from one chamber. I followed her and opened the door. There was someone on one of the beds under the covers. He slowly swayed from side to side while weeping angrily. "Hey," I said, walking closer to the bed and holding out my hand. The swaying of the figure stopped. I pulled off the blanket. At the same moment, the crying stopped, and there was no one under the blanket. Empty. With my mouth open, I began to back away when a clatter was heard from behind, and the door to the ward slammed shut. With a cry of surprise, I ran to the door and flung it open. Quick steps were heard in the corridor, as if someone small with bare feet was running away from the ward. I looked out into the corridor, and then laughter came from the ward behind me. Turning around sharply, I noticed how someone small hid behind the bed. The laughter belonged to a child. Ready to swear. In shock, I ran out of the room and ran to the stairs. Laughter and crying were already coming from all sides. When I reached my destination, I turned around. What was my horror when I saw that children were running along the corridor in the direction of the stairs. The most different ages. They were running, crawling on all 4s. Figures were moving along the walls and ceiling in my direction, and they were all crying. Screaming and leaning back, I fell. Rolling up the stairs to the 2nd floor, I saw that no one was coming down after me, and only somewhere in the depths of the 3rd floor were children's voices heard. "Maria," it was Max. He jumped up to me and helped me up. "What happened?" "Children," was all I managed to squeeze out. Looking up, Max said, "Let's go down. They won't get us there. We need to talk." Obediently going down to the 1st, we went into the office, where Stella was sitting. Giving me a mug of hot tea, she began her story. It turned out that once upon a time there was a fire in this hospital, and then the children's department was located on the 3rd floor. The fire was not very strong, but there was a lot of smoke, and many children suffocated in the smoke. Since then, after the renovation, strange things began to happen on the 3rd floor. The staff and patients heard children's steps along the corridors and wards, laughter and crying. At night, small figures of children ran around the floor. In general, the patients were no longer accommodated there, since it was calm on other floors. But the staff began to leave, and everything seemed to calm down, and no one had seen ghosts for a long time, so they didn't tell me anything right away. Apparently, in vain. Anyway, I don't work there anymore. It's kind of scary to live with ghosts next door. Now I work in another hospital, and everything is fine. But I still think that on the outskirts of the city, somewhere in the dark corners of the 3rd floor, that terrible cry of dead children, full of torment and suffering, is heard.
Thank you for your attention. Subscribe to the channel.